Cimoooooooo! Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the 2020 YugiTuber Grand Championship. So if you've already missed the action, be sure to check out the matches before this because it is going to be an absolute bloodbath this entire time. But first, I want to introduce my co-commentator, Mr. Joseph Rothschild, MBT Yu-Gi-Oh! Himself. Joseph, how you doing?
I'm doing really well, and I'm excited to watch a very interesting, interactive, and innovative match of Yu-Gi-Oh!
There's definitely no foreshadowing there. So we have DistantCoder himself playing TeamAPS. For those of you who are unfamiliar, each round of this tournament, players are assigned a different stipulation when it comes to deck building that was picked at complete random. This round is the Cross-Banlist Round, meaning that players were assigned a year at random, had to choose a deck, and have to play in this round against their opponent to advance to the top 8. For this round, TeamAPS, starting off with your Dragonic diagram, so this should give something away, was on 2017, and Mr. Kevin here, DistantCoder, was on 2016. So these years were not too far apart. We've seen some of the matchups already were very, like, there was like 10 years between them. And so we're going to get to see how TeamAPS is going to deal with this. It looks like he's on Draco. I'm imagining this is when Masterpiece was legal. So we're going to see just what he's able to do with this.
So 2017's a weird year. You know, you've got True Draco, of course, but you've also got the entire Zodiac core. You've got Zodiac True Draco, which was a huge deck around that time. Dinosaur playing Dragonic Diagram. You could splash any number of these 3 or 4 engines in just about anything. Triple Dynamite Knight, a big part of the format. Honestly, if I am playing an opponent whose deck I am unsure about, and they are in a year where Domain Monarch is a thing, I am absolutely considering Masterpiece as a way to go over the top of whatever their strategy is going to be. I would not be surprised if it's pure, but I would also not be surprised if it's Zoo.
I would absolutely agree with this. The reason being is because Masterpiece is probably one of the most poorly designed cards ever, and basically power crept out almost the entirety of everything that preceded its existence. And just being able to, at will, decide, oh, I'm going to make this card immune to all spell effects, all trap effects, or all monster effects. 2 of the 3, mind you, in most instances. Yeah, some decks just do not have the tools to deal with it. Not to mention, Paul had an absolute gauntlet of decks to pick from during this year. I think he could have also picked stuff like you said, Zodiac. I think Full Power Spiral was at the end of this year as well. So, like, that's a route he could have taken. Yeah, he had...
Wait, 2017 had Full Power Zoo and Full Power Spiral? Why did people keep playing Yu-Gi-Oh! After this year?
And the numbers keep climbing even to this very day. So
keep climbing from this position.
It only gets better, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Paul's just doing some typical True Draco shenanigans here. Looks like he activated he tribute summoned a Dynamite Knight, drew 1 off of Heritage, used the effect of Duality, now going for a Terraforming.
Revealing that Terraforming is the extra card they drew off of a miscount on Heritage. It is kind of hard when you're trying to play True Draco not to just go into autopilot and draw 3 off Heritage, 3 off Card of Demise, etc., etc., etc. Some of these cards, especially early ones, did have opportunity costs. So it looks like we're going for double Dynamite Knight as an opener. Not bad. You will have disruption on your opponent's turn, provided they activate anything. You'll be able to destroy their monsters. And if you are able to find a way to add an additional Draco to your hand via something like Waterfall, you can summon it in their main phase as well.
Yeah, again, I think if you could find any way to just blind Masterpiece, that would probably be the ultimate move here, but looks like Paul just couldn't get to that, which is okay. We're going to see a activation of Terraforming that's going to force one of the Dynamite Knights to activate. We're going to set True King's Return. Remember when that card was, that card was like one of the best cards in the format? Crazy. Oh, no. And so now we have Upstart Goblin here from DistantCoder. He's going to gain himself 1,000 life points. We're actually going to see True King's Return potentially get activated here, it looks like.
It stays on field alongside the True Draco Heritage, I think is what they're resolving right now.
Sure. And now we see Chicken Game, and people might start to piece together where DistantCoder might be going with this. But Chicken Game is... Talk about poorly designed cards, Joseph. Chicken Game is definitely one of them.
It's so frustrating because Chicken Game is a really cool card. It warps the game around it. It makes your opponent make interesting decisions about if they want to allow both players to keep drawing, if they want to go for it and pop it. But unfortunately, what it gets used for is an unstoppable draw combo, including Pseudospace. So the Monarch in the Banished Zone should let you know that this was unfortunately the Week 1 legal Monarch FTK. Relied very heavily on triple copies of Pantheism of the Monarch, and of course was no longer legal once Chicken Game and Pseudospace was no longer available to the general public. But you are about to see why the action was taken against this deck.
Yeah, this deck did not have a very long lifespan, as you mentioned, and for a good reason, because this deck, I believe, had like one of the highest FTK success ratios of all time.
Over 70%.
Yeah, like that is absurd. And keep in mind, there's very little interaction with this deck with the cards available at the time. Because there was such a short window to play this deck, it was kind of under the radar, but the people who did know about it did try to take advantage as best they could. Essentially, what you're going to be seeing DistantCoder here is going through the motions and effectively going to set up, ultimately, Life Equalizer and Magical Explosion. Life Equalizer is going to trigger once he has gotten his life points low enough through a combination of Chicken Game and Pseudospace. It's going to make both players' life points the same total, and then Magical Explosion, being the perfectly balanced Yu-Gi-Oh card that it is going to hit TeamAPS for a extremely high amount of damage based on the number of spell cards in DistantCoder's graveyard, which will have more than enough to FTK rather, TeamAPS in this instance.
So, one of the things that people forget about is that while Pantheism of the Monarchs does include the phrase once per turn on it, the once per turn is specific to its second effect. That's the one where you banish it from the graveyard to add a Monarch spell to your hand. Its first effect, to discard a Monarch spell and draw 2 cards, is not. So it, along with Toon Table of Contents and Cards from the Sky, forms a loop of an almost unstoppable series of draw spells. You see, just by activating a couple of Pantheisms over the course of the turn with the Pseudospace engine, Coder's already at 6 cards remaining in deck with an 8-card hand?
Right, yeah, and this is pretty much almost the end of the combo here. We see the Royal Magical Library.
The single duality.
Yeah, you can use the Royal Magical Library to just help you draw even more cards. That, I believe, is the deck's only normal summon if you happen to get it. The single duality just being used to just get the last pieces of your combo here. We're going to see him go ahead and fire off another Pseudospace. Pseudospace is going to duplicate any field spell that you banish, in this case Chicken Game, which then allows you to just pay another 1,000 life points, draw another card. So it's effectively like you have 6 Upstart Goblins in your deck as long as you see one Chicken Game before you see Pseudospace, and just continue to chain them into one another. We see him setting some cards here, but this should essentially just be the end of the game. Into the Void is going to resolve in the end phase here. A card that is still used in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! He is going to discard his hand, but he has everything he needs on the field. During standby phase, we're going to flip Magical Explosion as Chainlink 1. We're going to use Chainlink 2 Life Equalizer. That is going to make both players' life points 3,000, and then that way the Magical Explosion will finish off TeamAPS, and that is the end of the game.
Gosh, I love Yu-Gi-Oh! One thing that I was very afraid of once I heard the rules to this tournament is there's about 6 very specific years that have a super consistent FTK that was legal for about 6 days. This one's is Monarch Life Equalizer, and thankfully we no longer have to deal with it. But if I'm Paul, I am thinking long and hard about the cards I'm boarding in. Maybe, I don't know, Dark Bribes, Twin Twisters, figuring out ways to pop my spells and traps on my opponent's turn by tributing cards off of something like a True Draco Apocalypse or a True King's spell or trap. Ways to get the Chicken Game off the field before it resolves, ways to Droll and Lockbird my opponent, which was a very widely played card, ironically for the mirror of True Draco. I do have ways to interact.
Right, absolutely. There were, like we said, a few cards that could work to stop this. Albeit they were few and far between, some of them were able to be used here. We're going to see this effective diagram from TeamAPS destroying this card of Demise, which means he probably has another one. Going to grab a copy of Dynamite Knight off of that diagram activation. We're going to tribute for Dynamite Knight. We're going to activate the card of Demise in hand. We're going to get to draw 3 cards here, just refuel everything. Going to pot a duality here. We're going to see what he gets. Looks like an Unending Nightmare. That's actually a very good card post-sideboard that could maybe slow things down a bit here.
Oh, definitely picking that. Unending Nightmare is in the deck in order to hedge against things like opposing Zodiac Barrages, opposing Dragonic Diagrams, preventing True Draco players from getting off the ground in the first place and Zoo players from extending. Very widely played during this format, but given the DistantCoder's entire setup is based around chicken game, boy, it's going to be sweet to not only artificially decrease your life points outside of the range of a life equalizer, but also to pop every pseudo space they activate.
Yeah, this could be the break that TeamAPS needed. Anti-spell fragrance, that also can do it. Talk about a
Yu-Gi-Oh!
You know what? To be fair, though, to Paul, I mean, he got FTK'd in the first game.
No,
Anti-spell fragrance is effectively the
mercy.
FTK for game 3.
All right, so of course you have all these incredibly powerful floodgates that can beat back this combo when you go first. When your opponent goes first, it's a different story. So it's basically got to be Droll and Lock or bust here.
And that's assuming he is siding it, right? I mean, again, this FDK has one of the highest success rates of any deck in Yu-Gi-Oh! History. So it's really going to come down to potentially, since DistantCoder is going first in this game 3, if either he bricks or Paul has a way to stop this combo, we're going to see what happens.
So one way to stop the combo would be Ash Blossom. Now, I believe Ash Blossom was legal during this format, but it wasn't played very much because True Draco did a ton of searching, not very little, and Zodiac cared very little about if you ashed their cards or not.
Right.
This is where you would see it.
So it looks like this is going to resolve, so unfortunately nothing there. We're going to banish this Pantheism just to get 3 copies of Tenacity of the Monarchs, the deck's search spell. That's probably going to be used a little bit later on, revealing the Erebus just to get another Monarch spell to our hand, being Pantheism, because Pantheism being the bounce card that it is not once per turn for the draw effect. And now we're going to use the pseudo space, banish the chicken game, be able to draw another card here. Upstart's going to resolve, we're going to draw another card, and it doesn't look like we're going to be seeing much here, unless Paul has something at the very end to stop this. DistantCoder might be walking with this.
Was Red Reboot legal at this time? I don't remember.
I'm pretty sure it wasn't. I will say, though, Ash Blossom is something that wasn't available at the time because I believe Ash Blossom came out in Maximum Crisis, which was a 2017 set, so
Oh no. Yeah. Shoot.
I mean, we'll have to see, but going through the motions here, it doesn't even pick the Magical Explosion because you don't even need it till you just get to the end of the deck. You are just purely looking for more cards to thin your deck so that you can get pretty much the entirety of your deck into the graveyard for Magical Explosion. We're going to fire off another chicken game here. Just keep drawing. And yeah, now you guys can see why this deck was banned in under the time frame of a week.
I do like DistantCoder saying, in the chat, like there's like thinking involved in executing this combo. I appreciate the commitment to the bit, is what I'm trying to say.
Hey, to be fair, you do have to prioritize your card effects. If you do things out of order, that could potentially mess with how much value you're getting out of your cards, I suppose. I don't know. I'm trying to justify an FTK here. But trading coming down, going to pitch that Blue Eyes Toon Dragon that we got off the Toon Table of Contents very early on. Cards from the sky, banishing Aether, going to draw another couple cards. Only 7 cards left in deck here. Both players are at a life point discrepancy of 9,000, which is more than enough for life equalizer. We're setting 4 and passing. Into the Void's going to resolve, and this might be the end of the game. It looks like it, unless there's something here that Paul has. I don't know what it's going to take at this point, but no.
Looks like no response.
There's the life equalizer. And that's going to do it. Unfortunately, TeamAPS is now out of the tournament. Monarch FDK being piloted by DistantCoder. You know, FTKs are never fun, ladies and gentlemen, but, you know, in this absurd tournament where you could be playing the most powerful decks, not even Masterpiece can defeat a deck that loses 30% of the time.
You know, at the end of the day, this format is, I mean, the format we're currently in is pretty miserable. But let's take a moment to remind ourselves that it could be worse. You know, we could be playing against these decks, and I, for one, thank my lucky stars that this is no longer legal.
Guys, thank you so much for watching the video, and we will see you in the next match.